Hello, saludos. All right, welcome. We're going to get right into it because it's definitely a beefy story to share. So, hi, everyone. My name is Sofía Mohammed Vaccaro. Some of my closest friends know me as Sophie. And so I'm super excited to connect with you all today. This is definitely a talk that I have shared after several hundreds of talks that I have done in the past. I am a senior product design manager at Upwork, and I've done many different talks on UX and tech and the importance and ethics of AI design principles. And so this talk comes from all of the different networking sessions and one-on-ones that I've had with past design students, colleagues that I've connected with over all these years at different conferences. And my own wife also encouraging me to share this story. I've been dragging my feet, y'all. It's one of my most vulnerable sessions because it is going back to a time when I was homeless. And so I'll go ahead and share how it all started, how I got into that situation. And first and foremost, I do want to give an acknowledgement and a disclaimer that homelessness definitely has various levels caused by different factors, some in our control, some out of our control. And it definitely ranges from permanent to temporary, or temporary to permanent, I should say. And so that's something that I just want to acknowledge. And I hope my hope is that your takeaway from this is that regardless of what fire you are walking through, that as humans, we all have that extra 10% to really dig into the answers are within ourselves, actually. And that we all have that potential, and we have the community around us and the importance of building community to weather the different storms that we go through. And so first I'll share like how did it even happen? And this also comes from, myself connecting and meeting someone else that had experienced homelessness that broke into tech, Arlen Hamilton herself. And so from that and being a speaker at Lesbians Who Tech, this is where those different conversations started coming up and where that story came up. So I, back in 2009 is when I had moved to LA from Chicago. I unfortunately had a situation where I had to put a restraining order on my ex, and for my own safety, came here to LA. Not knowing anyone, but I needed to come here. And so I know for the most part, I share with folks other reasons why I came to LA. But if I'm being honest here, that was the truthful reason why I came here to LA. And so unfortunately, it was during the recession. And I was living on my own here. I ended up having to live with a roommate, which was an old friend of mine from Chicago. And the thing with the recession is that no matter how hard you work, right, to make sure that you're good, sometimes the ripple effect of the recession can impact the folks around you or the folks that you also depend on. In this case, the recession impacted my roommate. And he was not able to continue finding work in music marketing. At the time, I ended up hurrying up and getting a quick extra job, like in a taqueria. What's funny is that I worked at a taqueria, and here I am speaking at Techqueria. So it's full circle moment. And so one day I came into my apartment and I saw that half of the things were missing. And I'm like, oh no, I thought we were robbed. I called my roommate at the time. And he's like, no, we weren't robbed where they just took my stuff because my own stuff was still there. He's like, I could not afford to pay rent. I had to dip out. So that was already like one factor that was working. I also owned property in Chicago, and my tenant also got into a situation where she ended up squatting in the unit that I was renting to her. So then here I found myself having to sustain a mortgage and two rents here in LA. And as anybody knows, in LA, rent's expensive, even back then. And so I started to acquire more jobs to hustle to just kind of sustain everything. I knew that was going to last, so I put up the room for rent. I had a couple that came in that said, you know what, we would love to actually take up the whole space if that's available. And at the time, I could have said no and said, and kept looking for someone to fill the space. But in the situation that I was in, I was like, you know what? Here, yeah, go ahead. Take the whole apartment. And the girlfriend in that couple was like, well, where are you going to go? I said, it's okay. I'll figure it out. And to be quite honest, given having to like escape, like, again, abusive relationships in Chicago, the next step wasn't going to be anything that I was worried about, because I was grateful that I was alive. I was grateful that no matter what was my next step, that I was going to be okay. And that's why I wasn't worried about what was going to be the next step. And so I ended up just taking everything. I put some stuff in storage, ended up giving away a lot of stuff. I ended up, even though I was able to place my things in storage for 1 month, I ended up giving all of that away as well. And I just ended up living out of my car, and took up more jobs. I think I had up to 6 jobs during that time. And I went from working in a taqueria. I was a salsa aerobics instructor. I was a barista. I was a bartender as well. I did everything and anything that you could even think of under the sun to earn money. And I unfortunately wasn't in a position to sell my condo in Chicago because the squatter was in there. But at the same time, even though there was, I think at that time you were able to like file for bankruptcy or file for these different programs, I was just like, no, I'm going to figure this out. And so I continued living out of my car, beat up Toyota Corolla. And I just parked it near, like, maybe, I want to say about 3 blocks away from the taqueria. I kept my little gym membership at $10 a month, Planet Fitness, so that I could continue showering. And during the times that I was exhausted, I actually had made a friend who worked at a spa, and at times I spent the night in there. So that is, again, super lucky. That's a privilege in that sense, that I was able to do that, and that's how I was able to kind of survive it all. I think the things that I did want to share here that folks have encouraged me to share was just kind of like how I got through that, right? And so during that time, I knew that doing these 6 jobs, like rotating part-time jobs, that wasn't going to cut it to get out of my situation. I had a master's degree, a bachelor's degree. I had a lot of different skill sets. So I was just like, okay, let me hunker down. Let me figure out how am I going to get out of the situation, and let me really sit down. And I went to a nearby coffee shop. I took out my journal, which is my go-to anytime that I'm in a situation. Being the oldest sibling in my family, I kind of take on everything. And so it's very hard for me to ask for help. So I go to myself. cracked open my journal, and I literally made a list of all the different skill sets that I had, or everything that I could do in exchange for money, like as a trade or services that I could provide to earn more money, to a substantial more money. And so I tried that. And I also, at the time, I was doing a lot of spoken word, and I think out of frustration, I just started to continue like writing my poems and everything. And one day that I left the coffee shop, I came across a flyer where I think the cash prize for this hip hop contest was like $500. And I was like, oh my gosh, $500. This is great. I would love $500 because at the time, like I was literally scraping pennies. I would always look down and pick up whatever coins I could pick up, because with those coins, I was able to afford a coffee refill at Starbucks, so that I could use the Wi-Fi, so that I could research for those opportunities. And so on a day that I was looking down, looking for pennies and quarters, I came across this flyer, and I was like, oh, wow, maybe I can convert one of my poems into a rap and win this $500. It's a long shot. Like, I'm not in this world trying to be a rapper, but I was like, I'll take $500. Why not? And so I sat down and I said, okay, I'm gonna write this rap. I'm gonna like really flesh this out. For some reason, even though Spanish is my second language, not my first, the rap came out in Spanish. And it started off with balazos tira y brinco como rana, because I feel like, balazos is, bullets are coming at me and I'm jumping like a frog here and there. And so I wrote it out, and then the very next day, I just somehow like absorbed it and then performed it. I was able to win some money with that. And with that, I was grateful that I was able to afford gas in my car. On that day, I also met 4 female rappers. One was Palestinian. The other 3, one was Palestinian, one was Persian. The other 2 were Latina. And they took a look at my car. They took a look at what was in the car and kind of put 2 and 2 together, and saw that I was living out of my car. And so from there, they just kind of gathered around me and was like, do you need a place to stay? One ended up, asking her mom if I could stay in her shed at $300 a month, which I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to afford. And the rapper, who was Palestinian, she gave me a futon and a toaster oven. And so with that, at the time also, what was ironic was that I was also getting promoted to be a manager at the Techqueria that I was working at. And then that became another strategy where, like, instead of 1 taco as an individual contributor at the Techqueria, like now I got a 3 taco platter. So then that was literally another strategy of how I survived during that time, where I would go in the morning, I would order the 3 taco platter, but I would say, okay, just give me 1 of the 3 tacos with the rice. And they're like, you don't want the whole thing? No. I'll come back during lunch and dinner, or during my shift for the rest. So I would eat the taco with the rice. And then during lunchtime, I'd come back. And they're like, why are you here early? Your shift doesn't start until like later. I'm like, yeah. No, all good. And I know I was here earlier, but here's my receipt, like, to indicate that I have the 3 taco platter, but now I'm here for the taco and the frijoles. And so then I would come 10 minutes before my shift in the evening, and then I'll say, okay, I'm ready for the 3rd taco. And because I was still like trying to watch my carbs, oh my goodness, like I just had the taco by itself, and then that's it, because I already had the rice and beans during the day. And that's the way that I survived being able to eat every day. And when anybody messed up any customer's order, I was like, oh, thank goodness, because then that was food that I was able to take home to heat up in the toaster oven that the Palestinian rapper gave me. And so that's how I was able to survive during that time. I continued to go back to the coffee shop. I kept reusing the same cup every day. I kept rinsing it out and letting it dry out in my car. And from there, that's when I was like, okay, I really cannot sustain this. I really have to do something. So I continued to look on LinkedIn for jobs. For my past skill sets, I had my master's in educational policy. I had worked in politics and government. I had worked in education. So I was trying to find work in that area, or even as a public speaker, anything. But I started to see that a lot of jobs that really had, I would say, some healthy income, healthy salaries, were jobs in tech. And so that's when I was like, okay, then I need to teach myself whatever skill in order to get that job so that I can recover from this situation and get back on track. So I started to study people's profiles on LinkedIn. I started to study where they studied, what skill sets they learned, or what skill sets did these jobs require. And whatever was free, that's what I did. I started to look at events and training sessions. And I started to see if I would email the organizers and I would say, hey, I know I don't see any requests for volunteers, but here's my situation. And I am looking to gain this skill set. Can I volunteer so that I can learn this skill set? Because I am looking to get a job in this field so that I can learn more. I did spend some time in academia doing research. And so that's where I felt like I could break into tech. And so I just continued doing that. I continued volunteering at different conferences that had these astronomical registration prices. Gracias, Techqueria, for making this free and sustainable for all, and accessible for all, I should say. And so by going to those different events, it put me in proximity of the people that were in the jobs and the positions that I wanted to be in, so that I could be able to earn the salary to then be able to sustain myself. So then from there, I just continued going step by step. I was able to get one job led to the next. And then and these were contracts, and until finally I was hired full-time. And even then, I still had all my stuff in my car. I would drive to the parking garage for the company, which is where I met my future wife, or my current wife at that time, future wife. And there was even a time that there was something that she wanted to give me, or it was something where I had to pop open my trunk. And it was at that time that she saw everything and was like, what's going on here? And I had all kinds of different, of course, I had all of my own stuff, but I also had stuff from different gigs that I just picked up. I had a bunch of Smirnoff bottles because I worked as a promotional model for Smirnoff. And so she's like, what's going on here? What is all this? And so that's when I shared my story with her. I think she was one of the first ones that I shared my story with at that time. And she's like, I want to see like where you worked at. You worked at a taqueria? What? And now you're, here in this amazing, like this full-time role and at this startup in Silicon Beach. And so that is basically kind of like the journey that I've had in terms of going from homeless to tech, and how I just continued to pursue the skill set. I taught myself how to code. I taught myself, the skill set in terms of applying my interviewing skills to in research and academia to doing like UX research. I learned that UX was the area that I wanted to go into because I was all about, okay, how can we improve people's user experiences? And I think based off of that, where I'm at now is continuing to kind of pay it forward to make sure that I give a hand towards anyone that is looking to break into the field of tech or even looking to leverage their background in interviewing. Even for my fellow folks in entertainment here in LA, for folks that have that background with interviewing, whether they host or they have interviewed folks for documentaries, I'm like, that's an amazing skill set. And that's something that can translate over into UX research. For my fellow writers, even during the strike that was going on here in LA for WJ writers, TV writers, film writers, screenwriters in general. I shared how that skill set definitely translates over into being a content designer. And so I do want to take a moment to make sure that I go here into the chat and answer any questions. I don't see any questions in the Q&A section just yet, but feel free to hop in any questions. But I basically just wanted to make sure that I shared that journey with folks and to make sure that the takeaway is that no matter what fire you are going through, there is a community around you, even though you might feel like you're on a journey by yourself. There are various communities, not just one community around you. It's just a matter of making sure that you're making yourself visible, or even putting yourself in proximity of the folks that are in the positions that you want to be in. So let me just take a moment to pause and just like see if there's any questions in the chat. And of course, I'm leaving a lot out from this journey that I've had, but I just want to make sure that there are questions, that I address any questions here. Okay, so here's a question. Did you ever encounter self-doubt? What were some strategies, tips you have used to keep pushing forward? Oh my gosh, yes. I think in my first, I want to say in my first role in tech at this startup, mind you, like I was between 6 different jobs. I was hustling from like the Techqueria that I worked at to salsa aerobics, or starting with salsa aerobics and then the Techqueria and then barista and then bartender and then just all the different gigs. I was always moving. So for someone that's always moving and then all of a sudden you're in this full-time job at a desk and you're not moving and you're just at the desk all day. I remember going through all the training videos as a new hire and I kept zoning out. I kept like almost falling asleep at times. And I was on my 3rd cup of coffee and it was only 11 o'clock in the morning. And I literally told myself, oh my goodness, I could not do this. And it's not that this was my first full-time job. Had I had full-time jobs in the past? Yes, definitely. It was just that this came after a pretty long period of just hustling and constantly moving. And at that moment, I was just like, I can't do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I've experienced that at several points along the way. Even when I was asked to be a mentor to other folks in tech, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I just got into tech. How am I going to serve as a mentor to other folks that want to get into tech? I don't know if there's anything for me to give. And so when folks were like, no, we still we want you to be a mentor. We're short mentors, so we need you to serve. And so for anyone that knows me on this call, and I see some familiar names here, for folks that do know me pretty well, when there's a call to serve, I serve. It's very hard for me to not serve. That has its drawbacks, but that I'm definitely learning to monitor these days. But there was a call to serve as a mentor, and as I was mentoring high school students, even though I was in my first year being in tech, in those conversations, speaking to the students that I had in my mentorship group, I heard myself almost like talking to myself as well. And I think that's where my motivation that I gave to those students is where what conquered my own self-doubt. So yeah, definitely. That's how I encountered self-doubt, and then that's how I strategized around it. There are times like if I'm really zooming out and I'm thinking about like, oh, like imposter syndrome in the world of tech, and oh my gosh, I have this background. I think I've always been, I didn't share this at the beginning, but I'm Mexicana and Pakistani. And talk about imposter syndrome in either of those communities where, you doubt. So I feel like I was born, wondering like, hey, am I going to be found out that I'm not 100% Latina, or 100% South Asian, or 100% like whatever. And so I think just from that, I've learned to focus on just kind of like the world around me and like what's going on versus what's going on in my head. And that helps with the self-doubt for sure. And then strategies, tips that I've used to keep pushing forward is leaning into my why. And I do remember that the mantra that I kept telling myself is that during that time, and I kept writing it too, to keep myself from going too far in my head, was that I have the intelligence and creativity to figure anything out. And you can write that down. I'll say it again. Please write it down. Keep it on a Post-it by your desk or wherever you're always, maybe your bathroom mirror. Keep telling yourself that you have the creativity and intelligence to figure anything out. And whatever training you've had or lack of training, if you continue believing in that and in yourself, you will get through whatever fire you're experiencing. Let's see, I see from first gen Latino academic to now the tech world, it's always one step at a time, one day at a time. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And now having been in tech for, I think now almost 15 years, 15 plus years, I look back and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, it does take like one experience at a time. It takes one client at a time. If you're a freelancer, it takes one project at a time, and little by little, you will definitely get there. I will say that along the way, I was teaching. I ended up paying it forward by teaching at a school called General Assembly. I don't know. I'm sure folks know of it. And I remember the folks that were part of maintenance. The only Latinos in the building were folks that were part of maintenance. And oh, that's awesome. Folks have taken classes there. And I remember what kept me moving forward was a lady that told me, oh, hopefully, I just finished, I had finished a workshop there. And she's like, hopefully you can come back and teach a full class so that we can finally have a Latina instructor. And that really hit me hard as to the importance of why we need to take up space in tech, to continue holding the door open, to continue providing opportunities for the Latina community, and to continue mentoring others. So yes. Any other questions that folks, oh, I saw something that popped up in here. In this last minute, what have you learned about how to fluctuate between those, and what advice do you have on how to balance that? Step between being a student and a leader. And if we get a cut off here, you can feel free to continue connecting with me on LinkedIn. But Carol, share that link, share that question with me on Slack. And then Victor, how has the journey between been learning on these survival habits? Yeah, Victor, to your point, it's still hard for me to order coffee from a coffee shop that's not a 50-cent refill. I keep looking at coffee like the, I don't know, cold brew, pumpkin, whatever, and that's like $5. And I'm like, wow, that I was used to just 50 cents a cup. And so that will always be something that will carry with me for sure. And then also, as far as new habits, I'm definitely very tight on my budget, regardless of what salary I make. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. Feel free to stay in touch via LinkedIn. I am at Sofia Mohammed Bacaro. And thanks everyone for joining. Stay in touch. Lean on me for any further questions via LinkedIn. And I'm here rooting for all of you.